than done is extremely true for the IELTS exam. If you're preparing to take the IELTS exam, I'm sure you're probably freaking out right now. And a lot of candidates who take IELTS find the speaking section the hardest one because it involves face-to-face communication. But do you know, IELTS speaking is the easiest section actually? Well, you may think, how is that? Interviews are so spontaneous, I just won't have time to think of a good answer. Moreover, I'll be worrying. It's true. Speaking interviews are spontaneous, but all the test takers are worrying like you and don't have much time to plan either. And examiners are used to that. So they don't expect you to speak like an orator. You're only tested on your ability to speak fluently and without hesitation, use various vocabulary, avoid grammar mistakes, and pronounce words well. So today I'm going to share with you some crucial tips to get your desired score in the IELTS speaking test. My name is Michelle and you're watching me on Let's Talk, the place to develop your English language skills. First and foremost, you need to know what's coming. That is, you need to understand the structure of the IELTS speaking test. Do you know that even students who have taken the IELTS test multiple times sometimes can't really answer questions about the structure of the test? I think that's a huge mistake. You must know the structure of the IELTS speaking test in order to better answer questions because you will be expecting the right thing. So here are a few questions that you should be able to answer. First, how long is the speaking test? The answer is 11 to 14 minutes. And how many parts are there to the speaking test? Well, there are 3 parts. And what does each part consist of? So, the first part is introduction, which is questions about yourself and your preferences. And the second part is called a short talk or a long turn, where you're given a cue card and you have a minute to prepare and about 2 minutes to speak for. And in the end, you have a discussion about abstract topics like relationships, food, global issues, climate change, and so on. So tip number 1 is know what's coming. Now let's move to our tip 2. So in order to get a better score for the fluency and coherence criterion, you should use connectors. Some people also call them linking words and others call it signposting. Well, you need to use these words so that your speech sounds more organized and it is easy to follow. So the key to using connecting words is to use it naturally. And there is no better way to learn natural English than by a native speaker. So let's speak to one. Yes, you heard me right. So I'm going to use an app called as Cambly for this. Cambly is an English language learning app with trainers from various English-speaking countries who are available to answer your English-related questions 24/7. And the high point of this app is that it acquaints you to a variety of accents like American, Canadian, Kiwi, South African, and many more. And this is going to help you a lot in your IELTS listening as well. So let's connect to one of our Cambly teachers to learn more about connectors. So guys, now I'm going to open the Cambly app and we are going to try to speak to a native speaker. So I'm going to the tutors tab and we have all the tutors who are available to talk in green. So let's connect with Rachel. So she specializes in IELTS preparation. That's perfect. Let's give her a call. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Okay, so Rachel, I'm an IELTS teacher and I want your help with connecting words because I want to recommend your app to my students. So can you suggest me some connecting words that I can use for the IELTS speaking test for possibly adding information or concluding or to start my answer?
Yeah, sure. So, we obviously have all the different categories of linking words. So we have like the ones that can summarize. So, we could start with maybe additionally. Okay, maybe if you want to add, you could say like additionally, moreover,
Give me a
however.
sentence with additionally, please.
Okay, sure. Let me just think quickly of ones that I have at the top of my mind. So let's just say we were talking about your favorite holiday and you would say, so for my recent holiday, we were able to go to Cape Town where we were able to see so many amazing things such as Table Mountain, Boulders Beach, Camps Bay. additionally, we were also able to actually go to see the V&A waterfront, which was really amazing.
Perfect.
In particular, it was nice to see,
Great.
the amazing selection of shops.
Right. So you also use the word such as, and this is also a linking word if I'm right.
Yes.
For giving
Yeah.
examples.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. And could you just give me one for concluding if possible?
Yeah, definitely. So let's think of conclusions. So you could have in conclusion,
Right.
we could have to sum up, we could have to reiterate. So we could say, let's say we're talking about, why teenagers should have jobs. So we could say, I really do think that it is important for teenagers to have jobs because they are able to learn important tasks, etc. So in conclusion,
Right.
I really do think that there's so much value in teenagers having jobs as they are able to learn responsibility and they're able to earn additional money and they really are able to learn valuable skills for the workplace.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks for your help.
Pleasure.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Friends, how did you find this app? I'm sure you enjoyed the conversation I had with Rachel. Well, guys, this app is not free. But as you are a Let's Talk subscriber, you can avail a discount of 32% on a 3-month plan. And apart from this, there are multiple plans available on Cambly, and you can choose the one that suits your requirement and your learning needs. So I'm leaving a link for you in the description with the discount code. So make sure you use the app and let me know in the comments how did you find it. Well, in my conversation with the trainer, you learned some connectors. Now let's look at a few more connecting words. So to introduce your answer, you could say certainly, definitely, doubtlessly, or you could say undoubtedly, and of course. Okay. Apart from this, there are some more connecting words, but for now, we'll only look at this. So let's look at a question. Do you like playing sports? So if the examiner asks you this, you could start with, of course, I love playing cricket. Another question. Do you have a healthy diet? You could say, yes, I'm very conscious of what I eat. Without any doubt, I follow my diet plan made by my dietitian. Now, if you want to give your opinion, you could start your answer with something like, in my opinion, from my point of view, as far as I'm concerned, or I believe that. So let's look at a question. So if the examiner asks you, what do you study? You could say, I study science. Then they'll ask you a further question. Do you enjoy studying science? You could say, science is vast. In my opinion, it is interesting because you can relate to it, and I particularly like biology. So here I used a phrase for giving my opinion. So if you want to agree with the examiner, what would you say? Well, if you want to agree with the examiner, you could start with, I quite agree. Or you could say, I could not agree more. This means you agree 100%. Or else you could say you're absolutely right. On the other hand, for disagreeing, you could say something like, I don't quite agree with that. Or you could say, I don't accept that. Now let's see one of these in an example. So if the examiner asks you, do people from your country think fashion is important? You could answer it like this. Yes, I think people in my country think fashion is important, and I have recently noticed this. But I strongly disagree that fashion is more important than comfort. So here I use the phrase, but I strongly disagree. Now let's look at some connecting words to add information. You could use moreover, you could use besides, furthermore, in addition, and what's more. So let's look at an example. How many hours do you spend reading? I usually read before sleeping in the night. Besides this, I like reading while traveling. So here I used besides this to add information. Let's look at one more example. Do you think it's important to be punctual? Yes, it's very important to be on time in life as it is one of the basic manners. Moreover, I don't like to keep people waiting. And now finally, let's look at some words for concluding your IELTS in the speaking test. So for concluding your answer, you could say lastly, in the end, to sum up, or in conclusion. Now let's look at a question. Is there anything you would like to change about your flat? You could answer it like, I would love to have a big balcony where I can put some chairs and sit in the evening while having tea. Lastly, I would like to decorate it with plants. So, what I can say is that you must never forget connectors in order to get a good score in the criterion of fluency and coherence. The third point that I have for you is that yes and no are never satisfactory answers. Remember, this is a test and you have to show the examiner how good your English is. And if you give very short answers, you don't give them enough opportunity to hear you and give you a score. That's why it's important to add explanations, reasons, and examples. Let's look at good and bad examples for a question. So the question is, what are the causes of traffic jams in your city? The causes of traffic jams are narrow roads and overpopulation. So this is an example of a bad answer because it's too short and it gives minimum information. Now let's look at an example of a good answer. The causes of congestion are narrow roads and overpopulation. This is because our roads were designed a long time ago when the population of the city was much lower. For example, the road near my house was built in the 1960s when the population was about a third of what it is today. So here the answer is detailed, it's explained, and it gives the details that are expected. And on top of that, it also has an example. So this is a good answer. And that's why I will tell you that it's important to expand your answers in the IELTS speaking test. My last tip for you is, if you are unsure about how to answer the question, you can give yourself a bit more time to think by using some filler sentences. Like, this is a very tricky question, or that's an interesting question. So this way you will have some extra time to plan your answer. You can also repeat the examiner's question but in your own words. For example, if the examiner asks you, what was your favorite book in the childhood? What book did I like as a child? Let me see. Okay, so this is an example of how you can paraphrase the examiner's question. Some more examples of filler sentences would be, it's very hard to say for sure, but I would guess. Or else you could start with, it's difficult to say, I believe. Or else if you're not sure about the answer, you could say, I don't really know for sure, but I believe. And then you give your opinion. Okay, now with this tip comes a warning. If you begin every sentence like this, then the examiner will think that you have memorized your answers and memorized these phrases. So be very careful when you use this tip. You should use it on and off and not for every sentence that you speak. So here are my top tips for the IELTS speaking test. I hope these tips will give you a chance to calm your nerves before you take the IELTS speaking exams and that you would be able to break a leg with these strategies. Thank you so much for watching this lesson with me. I will see you soon in another IELTS lesson. Till then, take care and break a leg. Bye-bye.